Hi friends, we are back now for our second phase of our drafting project in this class. You're hopefully arrived at about this point in the process, right? So you should have your rear elevation drafted of one of our walls. Wall C was the one I did the demo on, but you can choose your own adventure. If you had chosen another wall, good for you, okay? So this should be basically where you are. If you started in a file without the CSUN template, then over here you will see you have no sheets and no layers, right? You'll only have the one layer that you've been working in. So what we're going to do first is get that template file, or at least get the useful stuff of that template file, and use that to create our next drawing, which will be our sheet layer for export. So you'll come back over into Canvas, you'll scroll to the beginning of our VectorWorks section, and then there's this resource files template, and you'll download the CSUN VectorWorks 2025 template.vwx file. Once you've downloaded that, you can open it over here, which you have to be in VectorWorks to do that, or you can open it through your downloads. So I'm just going to open it here. Let's go find that in my downloads. There it is. Great. So the difference, right, is this file has our design layers that are built into it. It has also some sheet layers that are built into it. And those are what I'm really interested in swiping for use on this assignment, okay? There are a couple of ways to do that. I think the easiest way is just to take this template file, save as, right, and call it on your desktop your name, right, Grease Practice Project or something along those lines, and save it there, right? And then I'm just going to come back over here and I'll select my whole little piece of drafting, Command C, copy that, and bring it over to my other file. And this file, for whatever reason, it's not in the center of the file. So the first thing I'm going to do is hit that center to the page button. It's right here in the zooms, fit to page area. And then once I'm closer to like the center of the page, Command V, and there it is. Yours will look a little bit different. One moment, let me fix this for you. It will look like this, right? Mine was a 3D one, but yours is only 2 dimensions. Okay, so it'll look like this. Now we're here. Our next step, and again, I'm on my scenery layer. My check mark is in the imaginary scenery box. Okay, so it'll look like this or something like this. And my next step is going to be to take what's called a viewport, which is just a snapshot of all of the things and visibilities as they appear right now on this whole design layer. So if I still had PDFs floating around over here, they would be included in that. If I had more than one thing drawn, it would be a picture of everything, right? To simplify my life a little bit, I'm going to actually create the crop box first. So I'm going to get my rectangle tool. I'm going to draw a little rectangle that just covers the piece that I'm trying to take a picture of. In this case, it is covering it with a solid rectangle, so I can't see it that it's inside there anymore, but I know it is. And then I'm going to come up here to View, the View menu, come down to Create Viewport. And it says right now, the selected object may be used as the viewport's crop, because this is highlighted in orange. Do I want to do this? Yes, I do. So, great. So now I get this Create Viewport menu, okay? And we're going to switch it over, because this is a construction drawing and I'm going to hand it to a carpenter, I want it to print on regular size paper instead of on the big giant paper that I usually use. The Arch D is the size I usually use for drafting. But if I'm doing a construction drawing in particular, I want to hand it to a carpenter, I want it to print on a regular printer. So I'm going to use this sheet layer down here, the 8.5 by 11 sheet, okay? We're going to leave the drawing number 1, that's fine, and I'm going to call this Wall C Construction. Okay, so I'm giving it a label that relates to its name. The next thing I'll do is change the scale of this, because generally our construction drawings, we want them in 1/2 inch scale. So I'll choose 1/2 inch scale here in this scale menu. And then we're going to leave all of this other stuff the same. We're going to say, okay. And then here we are on our sheet layer. So we are now a viewport, which is like a snapshot, sitting on a piece of paper, which is our sheet layer. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to edit the annotations. I got there by double clicking on the viewport. You actually have to click on a line of this object. You can't just click near it or inside of it. You have to click on a line, usually. Double click on it, you're going to get an edit viewport menu. You can choose different things. If you accidentally got your whole page, you can choose crop and you can draw that rectangle inside of the viewport and then it will create a viewport crop, right? You can use this to navigate back to the design layer you came from or to change the camera view, right? In our case, we want to use annotations, which is how we add dimensions and rearrange our drawing labels. So I'm going to click annotations and I'm going to say, okay. All right. So now I'm inside. I'm going to do my annotations. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to get my constrained linear dimension tool. It's in my basic tool sets. It's also, if you have your other tools open, it's this tiny ruler in your special tool sets. Constrained linear dimension tool. Okay. So this is how I add the measurements. So if you remember looking at Canvas, we had that example of a construction drawing over here. These are your examples that we're replicating. It's got all of these dimensions, right, that are embedded on that construction drawing as measurements, right? So we're going to come in and add these dimensions to our drafting, okay? The first thing I'm going to do is make sure I'm not in the arch mode, but in the ASME mode, because I like those prettier, and so those are the ones I choose as a set designer. Then I'm going to snap here to the top and the bottom of this drawing, and it will create that dimension for me based on the length that it measures, okay? You will notice these are constrained, so this is the measurement not of the distance that is the length of this board, but of the width of the flat overall, right? If I'm like, hey, I know I need to help out whoever's building this thing and give them a length of this board, right, depending on who my carpenter is, I might need to use an unconstrained linear dimension tool. That's this one. The unconstrained tool is going to give you the actual length of that piece of wood, right, as opposed to the width of the flat overall. So if you are in that situation where I need a hypotenuse like this, then I might give that unconstrained linear dimension to help out my carpenter, okay? So you'll give overall dimensions. Some basic rules of dimensions are that you want bigger dimensions on the outside with smaller dimensions sort of nesting inside of them. So if I wanted to give them a dimension about where that would be falling, I would set this shorter dimension inside of this taller one, okay? You typically want to pull all of your dimensions outside of the drawing, although I do break that rule. If you look at my examples, I break that rule a little bit because of the density of the dimensions I'm trying to give, right? But in this case, as long as you give your overall dimensions, you'll be okay, okay? The next step that I would like you to do as part of your project here is to place a cut list next to this annotation, right, on the drawing. And I'm going to have you put it inside the viewport. You could put it outside the viewport on the piece of paper. That would also be fine. But I'm going to have you put it inside the viewport. And the reason is that if I were making like a big sheet of drafting, I could then pick up the whole viewport and all of those notes would come with it automatically. Okay. There are a couple of tools for creating annotations. The text box is my go-to, so this will be something that I'll use a lot of the time if I'm just trying to say, here's my cut list, right? Over here is the call-out tool, and that places a little text box and then creates a pointing arrow. So testing the call-out tool, right? And I say, okay. And so now that is going to provide that kind of a thing, right? Where instead of just a piece of text, it's a piece of text with an arrow pointing to a specific thing. This is a great way to add notes for details about how you would build stuff, right? So you might put that kind of a call out to describe the angles of the edges, right? That these are beveled edges that are going to fit together, or any other notes for your carpenter. Okay, so the next thing we're going to have you do is create a cut list for your flat. It would be amazing if you wanted to come in and take a little text box, your little text tool, right? Create some little labels on your different pieces of wood for your cut list so that it's kind of the way we did it in class. So if you would like to do that, you absolutely may. The one thing to keep in mind is that your text tool, it might be helpful to change the color of it, right? So that it's easier to see it on the thing, right? So that might be in here somewhere. Font size. Color is going to be in your attributes. I closed mine. Or I lost it. Let me go get my attributes back. I'm like you. Palettes. Attributes. There. Now they're back. And I can dock them back into my corner. Great. So I can change my color for my text. Maybe I'll make it green, just so that it's easier to see what is where, right? And I can just put my little text box labels over different pieces of this flat, okay? So that can be step one, right? Is to label all your different sizes. On a flat like this, I would not necessarily give dimensions for each of these different toggles, but you may if it's helpful. So you absolutely can give those different dimensions for each individual toggle. And then for anything else, you can just measure either using the dimension tool to pull a measurement. So if I want to know how long, for example, this piece is, I can pull its measurement, 6 foot 6.5, right? So that I know. You can do it with your dimension tool, or you can do it with a measuring tape, or you can go back into your outside drawing and make and just click on individual pieces in order to find out how long they are, because it'll generate that information in the object info. So if you were to like click on this rectangle, the object info would tell you what it is. In any case, please make a cut list. That cut list should be a text box that lives over here to the side. It should say cut list, cute list, cut list at the top. I'll make that a little bigger just so that it's clear. And then underneath it, I'm going to say 1 by 3, and then I'm going to say A1 at 10 foot 0 and 5/8 inches, right? And so forth, right? So, and maybe I'll change the color so that this matches like the color I'm using for the whatever, right? You can get as fancy as you want. And create that nice cut list, okay? I would let the title of the cut list be a little bigger than the actual numbers on the cut list, so maybe this will go back to being like size 12. And I would set this off to the side of my drafting, okay? So you'll do your dimensions, and then you'll come back and add your cut list. If you want to, for style reasons, put a little box around your cut list, you totally can. You can create that box like this and then send it to the back, which is down. It's a little further into this menu than fit on my screen right now. So let me see if I can get it to pop up for you. There we go. Send to back, and then that will sit underneath your text box, and you can just kind of shift your text box in a little bit, you know, do the thing, make it pretty. So you can do that. Shift and arrow keys are the nudge tool that lets you just kind of move stuff around a little bit, if that's helpful. And then you'll add any additional notes for your carpenters. So that is creating your viewport, adding your cut list inside the annotations. Then you're going to exit your viewport annotations, and you do one more step before we continue on our little journey, and that is we update our title block. So if you come down here to the bottom, you'll see a title block, okay? When you select it, it gives you all this information here and object information about it. Excuse me, title block border. Gives you a layer, gives you a style, blah, 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 okay? Let's come over here first, and we're going to change its sheet number. Typically, drawing 1 is the ground plan, 2 is the section, 3 is the first sheet of elevations, and so on. Because these are construction drawings, I'm going to call this C, and then I'm going to call it, because it's wall C, I'm going to call it C, right? That'll be the sheet number, construction drawing for wall C. And then I'm going to say over here in the information about it in the sheet title, I will say wall C construction. Okay. So that then you'll see appears over here. So the sheet number appears in this box automatically, and then that wall C construction appears automatically over there. So now we have a couple more things we're going to update, and those are all going to be available in the title block manager, right? You'll see there are 3 edit options. You want title block manager. You can either click here in object info, or you can double click on the title block and it's going to give you these edit options, and the one you want is, I promise you, title block manager. You say okay. It's going to say, hey, you got other stuff open. Do you want to da-da-da? I only ever load the active file. I'm not trying to mess up the rest of my world. Just doing the active file, okay? So, editing sheet, it's got multiple sheets are marked for application. That is okay for the purposes of this adventure. We're only doing 1 or 2 sheets, and that's fine. There are 2 kinds of data in this form. The first one is the project data, and that is going to be for absolutely everything, right? So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to call it the project name is Greece. Yes, and it will be. Okay, that's fine. Do it, Greece. Okay, cool. The event location, don't worry about it. The designer of this show is Lily. The contact information, blah, 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 would go in there. If I can tap on through the technical director, that's you, because you're making the construction drawing. So then you would type in your name here, okay? That's all of the stuff in your project data. Next page, sheet data. The sheet title, right, which we have already added, wall C construction. So that should be fine. It should be coming from the sheet title over here. We're going to hit refresh plot date. Nothing is going to happen when we do that. We have to give it a plot date format first, and then we'll hit refresh plot date, and it will create that date. So if I say auto short, and then I say refresh plot date, it'll put today's date in that box. Down here, I can also hit today's date. It'll put today's date in that box. The next thing that you're going to want to add is right here, your sheet scale. And if you remember, we are in half-inch scale on these construction drawings. So you will type in this box, 1/2 inch equals 1 foot dash 0 inches, the way that we do. And then I usually just put my initials, whoever did the drafting. It may or may not appear in the title block you're using. So I'll leave that for there. And I say okay. And look, all of these things have added themselves into this thing, right? Into this drawing in the title block, okay? If you want to put the director in, you can. It's Dylan Thomas. Otherwise, that is your sheet layer. There it is. Ta-da. So, once you have set that up, okay, and you've filled in your title block, you've put all of your information in on it, and it looks pretty, then you will export it as a PDF. And you'll do that by going to the File menu. Well, I would first save it just to make sure I don't lose it. And then I would export it. So I'm going to go to my File menu. I'm going to scroll down here to where it says Export. And I'm going to say Export PDF. And that will create me a PDF of this sheet. And I say Export. And it will boop, 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 boop. It's going to ask what you want to call it. Typically, I'm going to call it today's date. And then wall C construction. And then I'll just leave it, you know, the rest of the file name. Okay. I do that so I can find it again, so I can upload it to places, right? If I were doing more than one in the same file, I would do what's called a package instead, and it would make that combination PDF with the multiple sheets. So let's say that for now, make sure you know where you're putting it. I'm apparently putting it in my downloads folder, which is not ideal, but it's whatever. And I say save. And then Adobe Acrobat is opening in the background, and it's going to be like, hey, it looks like this. It looks like this. Is this what you meant? And I did, so that's fine. So you will follow those steps. You will make your whole cut list with all of the lengths of all of the pieces of wood you need to cut. And you will export this and submit it as part of the assignment, right? So this is part 1. Completing this step is part 1 of the assignment that is due today, or not today, but for this class. All of it will be due next week. And then part 2, if we go back and look into the assignment, you can see it, right? So we're going to come back to the module here on canvas.com, and then we're going to come down here, final technical drawings, right? So part 2, so here we go. Part 1, your completed grease practice project exported as a PDF. Part 2, your completed Matilda drafting project as a .vwx, a VectorWorks file, and exported as a PDF. So part 2 of your project is going to be to take all of these things that you learned in your brain and then use them to do one of our walls from Matilda, right? So you're going to practice the whole thing we just did, the whole process, using in the modules one of our walls from Matilda. I've given you all of the walls that existed in Matilda, and you can open them up and take a look around and pick one that you would like to do. If you are wanting to work on one that has like a lot, like a giant wall, some of them are giant walls, you might include where you would have stock flats, the way that I did on the construction drawings for my thing, right? So you might include, as in this example, right, over here I would have a stock 4x8 flat and another stock 4x8 flat, right? So you can create this kind of business within the framework of those Matilda drawings. If you're good at drafting, you'll pick something more trickier. And if you are struggling, you'll pick a simpler version, and I can help you make those choices on the day. So that will be the assignment that we'll do. For reference, and so that you remember, you're going to come back and look in this module. You're going to say final technical drawings, and you'll see there is a rubric, and these are the things that you're going to get the grade out of, right? So did you do the cut list? Is it correct? Did you make your dimensions? Did you do your title block? Did you send me a PDF? That's those 5 points. Did you do the same process of creating that construction drawing for the Matilda thing? You'll get 5 points for that. And then did you make a cut list for the built components? I don't need cut lists for the stock flats, just for the built components. And then did you give me dimensions, put a title block together, and export it as a PDF? Okay, that's it. That's all. We're going to do that today. Let me know when you have questions, and I look forward to helping you navigate through this software. Awesome. Thanks, friends. Bye.